Today we bring to you what will be our first installment of 3 assemblies dedicated to Black History Month. In these assemblies, we, current and past members of Dr. Johnson's history classes, will discuss different topics in African American history to better understand the context of the present. While there are many misconceptions about Black History Month and why we as a school choose to celebrate it, its existence is purposeful. We celebrate Black History Month to commemorate African Americans who risked their lives by surviving, and to celebrate those who continue to fight for equality, democracy, and freedom for African Americans and people across the globe. In addition, we celebrate Black History Month to fulfill Spence's mission to educate one another and to strengthen our understanding of American history. So, to begin, I'd like to briefly discuss why we have Black History Month in the first place. We celebrate Black History Month in February, not because it's the shortest month of the year, but instead because Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, began a celebration in this early 20th century. He chose February because it holds the birthday of former President Lincoln, who had freed many enslaved people in this country with the signing of an executive order known as the Emancipation Proclamation. After closer analysis and research, I now know that Lincoln freed those enslaved from their bondage to benefit white laborers in the Union. He never intended to provide Blacks with all their due citizenship rights. Regardless of Lincoln's motivation, Negro History Week was born as a conduit to democratize and popularize the study of African American history. It wasn't until the 1970s when Negro History Week grew into the whole month of February, due to the efforts of members of the Black Power movement who wanted to pay homage to Woodson's contributions and to celebrate the history of Black people. In U.S. history and topics in Black American history with Dr. Johnson these past 2 years, I've come to understand the importance of learning Black American history, not just American history. American history encompasses the history of Black American history, but more times than not, Black people are mentioned in the context of their white oppressors, as if Blacks cannot exist without the association of whites, or as if the experiences of Black people are defined by their interactions with white people just because white people hold power. So, learning Black American history can only complete our study of a deeply fragmented American history. As part of our celebration of Black History Month, we hope that you consider, if not internalize, how crucial it is for us to pay attention to Black history, because otherwise it just gets swept under the rug, leading to the perpetuation of institutional racism. Recognizing that the experiences of Black people in this country are as unique and multifaceted enhances our understanding of the present. And so, among Blacks who lack the recognition they so deserve for their contributions to the fight for equality are Black women. Black women have often been omitted from history books despite their work, and although they have made tremendous efforts for Black people and all women. Black women have endured multiple forms of marginalization: race, gender, class, and sexual orientation discrimination. So, Black women's advocacy serves not as a push against the feminist movement, but in addition to it, providing an uncredited narrative of a woman's experience in America. Our patriarchal society forces Black women to be subservient, to be quiet, and to endure exploitation for the convenience of men. There exists a stereotype that Black women are somehow indestructible, that they are overly strong so that they don't have the right to protest their subjugation because they can brave it. These stereotypes, while destructive, evidence Black women's multifaceted marginalization and how much more difficult it is for them to speak up and garner support. So before Barack Obama's election to the presidency, Michelle Obama was quoted in Essence magazine stating, "Black women are hobbled by their strength and directness. I admit it, I'm louder than the average human being and have no fear of speaking my mind. These traits don't come from the color of my skin, but from an unwavering belief in my own intelligence," end quote. Historically, many African Americans have consciously refused to accept the way they've been depicted, stereotyped, and exploited. Several of them have chosen to speak out instead of being complicit and being silent. I've come to know this phenomenon as talking back, to showcase how Black women so eloquently talk back to white men, to Black men, and to the women who don't stand by their side. We've titled this assembly Talk Back.
If you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. Zora Neale Hurston.
Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw is a civil rights activist and a full-time professor of critical race theory and constitutional law at UCLA and Columbia School of Law. Dr. Crenshaw introduced the term intersectionality to feminist theory and activism in the 1980s. Among several things, her activism included co-founding the African American Policy Forum in 1996. Described as a, quote, social justice think tank, unquote, the African American Policy Forum strives to bridge ties between the arts and activism and to hone in on structural and systematic oppression. Her activism is centered around promoting intersectional feminism to support and advocate for Black women, as well as promoting the work of social inclusion.
In her 1989 essay, Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex, a Black Feminist Critique of Anti-Discrimination Doctrine, Feminist Theory, and Anti-Racist Politics, Dr. Crenshaw centered her focus on intersectionality around Black women in order to, quote, contrast the multidimensionality of Black women's experience with a single-axis analysis that distorts these experiences. To explain this further, Dr. Crenshaw had addressed the 1964 case of DeGraffenreid versus General Motors, where a number of Black female employees were laid off from work at General Motors. Soon afterwards, they sued for discrimination. General Motors had claimed that it was not discrimination because there were both women, solely white women might I add, as well as Black men working in the factories. What we see here is that although there is a clear absence of Black women within the factories, there was still an attempt made to justify their exclusion altogether. This is where intersectionality plays a key role in understanding how multiple identifiers put people at a further disadvantage, especially Black women. The single-axis analysis that she refers to is the exclusion of Black women in both the Black freedom movements and different women's rights and feminist movements. For instance, the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement was started by 3 queer Black women, Alicia Garza, Patrice Coolers, and Opal Tometi. The founders' intentions were to create a movement that included the voices and experiences of all Black people, including queer Black people. However, the movement manifested in ways to only combat police brutality for cisgendered Black men, completely ignoring the statistics and stories of Black women who are affected by violence and police brutality as well. Women's rights movements and modern-day feminism excludes Black women by creating definitions of feminism that pertain to the struggles of middle and upper-class cisgendered white women.
Since the publishing of her essay, Dr. Crenshaw has continuously spoken up about the need to constantly discuss Black women when discussing intersectionality. Since 1989, the word intersectionality continues to be appropriated and contextualized in order to further marginalize and exclude Black women. In 2015, Dr. Crenshaw published a study in the African American Policy Forum titled Black Girls Matter, Pushed Out, Over-Policed, and Underprotected. Dr. Crenshaw, quote, seems to increase awareness about the gendered consequences of disciplinary and push-out policies for, in particular, Black girls. The study reports on how punishment within the school system leads to school-to-prison pipeline for Black children. Like we mentioned before, similar studies on the topic tend to focus on the statistics of Black boys and excludes the narrative and experiences of Black girls and women. Dr. Crenshaw's strategies in accurately portraying these experiences was through elevating the voices and stories of young Black girls. These stories can provide an analysis of both a racial and gendered comparison of Black girls to other groups of girls. Through the study, Dr. Crenshaw deduced that Black girls often face feelings of unsafety, sexual and personal violence, and lack of support within school systems that are set up for them to fail. These feelings and trends thus enforce the school-to-prison pipeline. Through Black Girls Matter, Pushed Out, Over-Policed, and Underprotected, Crenshaw offers recommendations that benefit both people of color and girls, thus creating opportunities for Black girls to succeed within school systems. These recommendations include expanding opportunities for girls of color through inclusion in policy research and advocacy, as well as developing programs within the school system that increase the feelings of safety for girls, especially through sexual violence prevention.
The Say Her Name campaign was launched on May 20th, 2015. Hashtag Say Her Name, a vigil in memory of Black women and girls killed by the police, was introduced to the media as a way to shed light on the numerous cases of police brutality against Black women. Many in the media debated the necessity for a movement, considering the fact that the hashtag Black Lives Matter already existed and had grown popular. but I'm going to conduct a brief activity with you all today. I would like you all to raise your hands, and as I read the following names, place your arm down when you hear a name you're unfamiliar with. So everyone raise your hand. Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Michelle Cousseau, Chantel Davis, Shelley Frey, Kian Livingston, Miriam Carey. Thank you.
So if you were looking around and looking at the hands that went up and then went down, you can see how Black girls and Black women are constantly excluded from the narrative when we talk about police brutality. And that's why Dr. Crenshaw's work with intersectionality and talking about intersectional feminism is so important, because we need to continue to highlight the problems that Black women face. Thank you.
Black women have experienced sexual violence at the hands of white men.